I covered the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and I felt a lot of despair from the future of this place. And the only place I found a bit of hope is actually Jerusalem. And this is
Even after October 7th.
Yeah, especially after October
Wow.
7th.
Wow.
Because Jerusalem is the only place where Israelis and Palestinians wake up and go to work together on the same level, not as a boss and an employee and as a soldiers and someone who want to cross the checkpoints. And most of the time they are not killing each other. They are working day after day together, and the war didn't change it.
Welcome back to the Pluralist Podcast from both sides of the ocean. I'm Orly Erez-Likhovski, Executive Director of the Israel Religious Action Center.
And I'm Josh Weinberg, Vice President for Israel and Reform Zionism for the ORJ and Director of ARTSA.
Josh, good to be here with you.
Thank you, Orly. Yeah, really great. And I'm, we're building up towards Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, which I think, I don't know if I can speak for the both of us in saying we may have some mixed feelings about.
Completely. I actually am recording it close to Jerusalem from my home in Zion. And, I think
I'm here in Brooklyn, Brooklyn Shilmala, but here in the diaspora, we observe 2 days of Yom Yerushalayim. I'm just kidding. We don't.
And, I think one of the people who really captured the essence of Jerusalem is the late poet Yehuda Amichai. And he wrote many poems about Jerusalem, but in one of those really beautiful poems, he calls Jerusalem a port city on the edge of eternity, the Venice of God. And I think that's such a beautiful description of a very, very, very complex city. And as you said, this week we are marking Jerusalem Day, a day that is being commemorated since 1968 to symbolize the unification of Jerusalem after the Six-Day War. But as we know, Jerusalem is a city that reflects many of the deepest tensions in Israeli society, whether it's the tension between Jews and Palestinians, between religious and secular Jews, between liberals and extremists, and between competing visions for Israel's future. And today, we want to move beyond slogans and simplistic narratives to have an honest conversation about the realities of Jerusalem in 2026, about the challenges, the changes, and the people shaping the city from the ground. We are honored to be joined by one of the leading journalists here in Israel and observers of Jerusalem, someone who has spent years documenting the city and living these realities firsthand.
Many of you may recognize Nir Hasson's byline, as he is Haaretz's Jerusalem correspondent and one of the leading journalists, as you said, covering the city's political, social, and human realities, including years of reporting on Jerusalem Day and the famous Flag March, which we'll get to. Nir, of course, is the author of the 2017 book Urshalim, about relationships between Israelis and Palestinians in Jerusalem, covering really the 50 years since what we call the unification of Jerusalem after the Six-Day War. And this year received the prestigious Sokolov Prize for journalism. Over the past 2 years, he has also, of course, extensively covered the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and just wrote about that this week in Haaretz. Nir, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, we want to start to talk about what is Jerusalem Day. And actually, when I prepared for this episode, I was really surprised to discover that actually there is a law that, anchors this day, the Jerusalem Day law that was passed in 1998. But, the law itself says nothing about what it means, what Jerusalem Day means. And I want to ask you, sort of to kick us going, to start us going, can you tell us what Jerusalem means for you?
Oh my God. Well, you said before that you have mixed feeling about Jerusalem Day. Well, I do not have a mixed feeling about Jerusalem Day. For me, actually, it's a very sad day, because this is the day when we put the light on the discrimination, the occupation, I will even say the apartheid that we have in our city. This is the day when we emphasize the fact that 30% of the residents of Jerusalem are not citizens of the state of Israel. And this is the day where there is this flag march which is a very ugly event with a lot of violence and racism. And last year I took a photo in the old city, in the Muslim quarter of the old city, of an ATM box with a sign on it, writing in Hebrew, Basad, it's belong to Jews, please do not harm.
Let's just explain Basad for our listeners. Basad is an Aramaic, it means Bisayat de Shemaya with, help. Yes, that many people put on their notes or their papers, right, just as a sign. So it's sort of a marking of territory, would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a note for the people who take place who participate in this march. Please do not harm this property because this belongs to Jews. Now, as a Jewish, when you see such a sign, I mean, we were the victims of so many such events, and now we are the victimizers. This is how it felt. It felt like a pogrom. So for me, Jerusalem Day is not a happy day. Every year, I just wait, and I just told my wife yesterday that I'm just wait for this week to end, and hope it will be without violence and without casualties. But for me, it's a sad day. Yeah.
I do want you to say a word about what Jerusalem is for you. And I think
Okay.
at the beginning we said that we have mixed feelings about Jerusalem, the city. You live in Jerusalem, right?
Right. I born in Jerusalem and
grew up here. So what is the city for you?
Well, I always say Jerusalem is not a very good city to live in, but it's a great city to be a journalist in. Yeah, I mean, it's not the best city in Israel, like if you measure, quality of life. And we have a lot of issues, and as a secular, it's felt more and more like I'm not sure I have a place here. I think two years ago I published a survey that's saying that only 9% of the Jerusalemites consider themselves as a secular Jews, which is pretty small minority. But to be a journalist in Jerusalem, I could not ask more. I mean, it's really I cannot think about any other place more interesting than Jerusalem. I always quote the first British governor of Jerusalem, Ronald Storrs, who said in his memories, "There is no promotion after Jerusalem." And so for me, there's no promotion after Jerusalem. I mean, this is the place to be a journalist in. But yeah, so I have mixed here. I have mixed feelings, of course. There's a lot of people and there's a lot of places in Jerusalem that I love, but I feel a lot of sadness and even rage about what I see here, about what I know about what's going on in East Jerusalem and in other places of Jerusalem. So yeah, it's tough.
Well, Nir, you've been, of course, covering Jerusalem for many years, and you even wrote a book, trying to capture the complexity of the city and the relationships within it. If Jerusalem is sort of the highest, place you can get to as a journalist, has it become harder in recent years to report honestly and with nuance about Jerusalem, and especially, when Israeli society feels more polarized and, the ideologies are really, butting heads against each other? Do you feel like there's less tolerance for complexity, really? And tell us just a little bit about how this has evolved over the past, 10, 20 years since you've been covering the city a little bit. Like paint us a picture of what it looks like to you.
Well, let me start with some provocative saying. I don't think the Israeli society is polarized. In matter of fact, I think that we are not polarized enough.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that in the name of unity and afraid of polarization, my political camp, the left political camp in Israel, give over his ideals, his principles, and we stop talking about the occupation, about the discrimination of the Palestinians. We are not talking about peace anymore. We are not talking about diplomatic solutions to the issue. And this is because we are so afraid of polarization. So I don't think the Israeli discourse is polarized. This is only a comment. But having said that, I think that the biggest problem in the Israeli discourse about Jerusalem is that we are not talking about the real Jerusalem. We talked about some dream Jerusalem
And what is
that
what is the real
we have in
Jerusalem
the
to you?
head. Okay, so
Yeah.
you mentioned my book earlier. It's called Urshalim. Now Urshalim is the official name of the city in Arabic. But nobody used this name. No Arabic speakers ever used the name Urshalim. This is
Yes,
an
they call it
name.
El-Quds,
They
right?
call it El-Quds, of course. This
Quds.
is the name, El-Quds. But the government, when you drive from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and you see on the sign, it's called Urshalim. Now, this is so weird. It's a huge anomaly of Jerusalem, and this is exactly the symbol of the gap between the real day-to-day Jerusalem and the Jerusalem that the Israeli thinks about or talk about in the Israeli discourse. Like, we had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 election campaigns in the last few years. Jerusalem wasn't even on these campaigns. No one talked about it. No one talked about the fact that I just mentioned, that 30% of the residents of our capitals are not citizens of the state of Israel, which is insane, crazy.
Could you clarify, say a few words about that? Because I'm not sure our listeners know, like, the special status of the residents of East Jerusalem compared to Palestinians of Israel and compared to Palestinians in the West Bank.
Okay, so let's go back to history a bit. In June 1967, like 2 weeks after the war, the Israeli government took a few very important decisions. One decision is to draw.
But did you say that we know in the war that Israel
occupied, of course, in 1967, Israel occupied.
Just to make sure,
yeah. Okay, so I'm going back. So let's go back to the history a bit. So in June 1967, after the IDF occupied the West Bank, the Israeli government took few huge decisions about Jerusalem that actually shaped the city until our days. The first decision was to draw the line of annexation, actually the border of Jerusalem, which is much bigger than Jordanian Jerusalem. It's 10 times bigger than the eastern city, the eastern Jordanian city. The eastern city was a pretty small city around the old city, and the territory that we annexed was 10 times bigger than this. And on this territory, there were approximately about 70,000 Palestinians who live in all kinds of communities. There were neighborhoods and villages and Bedouin and all kinds of communities. And the most important decision that the government took was not to give them full citizenship, but to give them like half citizenship, which called residency. So until today, more than 90% of the Palestinians in East Jerusalem are only residents of the state of Israel and not citizens of the state of Israel. Now what are the differences?
They can apply for citizenship, right?
They can. Well, theoretically they can, but actually it's almost impossible to get it. It's a very long and very expensive and very difficult process to get it. And the fact is that very, very few are succeeding of finish this process and get the citizenship. So what are the differences between residency and citizenship? Okay, so they cannot vote for the Knesset. They don't have right to vote for the parliament. They don't have passport. If they travel the world, they travel with what we call laissez-passer, which is like travel document. But the most important thing is that residency can be revoked. They can take it from you, and they can take it from you if you are not residents in Israel, if you are not living in Israel. For living Israel, you don't have to go to Ben Gurion Airport or to Allenby Bridge. You can just cross to the other side of the street, because Israel annexed only East Jerusalem. It didn't annex the West Bank. So there are some neighborhoods that if you live in the right side of the street, in the left side of the street, you're in Jerusalem, but on the right side of the street, you're in the West Bank. So if you move to the other side of the street, you're in the West Bank.
And you're going to lose your residency.
You lose your residency. You can lose all kinds of benefits that from national insurance. You can lose your health insurance and etc. So what happened is that this is what shaped the demography of Jerusalem until today, because in 1967 the Palestinians were only 25% of the population, and today they are about 40% of the population. Even though from 67 till now, Israel built huge neighborhoods, some of them bigger than some of the cities in Israel.
Jewish neighborhoods.
Only for the Jewish population, right?
Yeah.
But the Jewish proportion, the Jewish part of the city got shrink, and the Arab population increased.
Other than the Haredim, right? So the ultra-Orthodox are...
Okay, what happened is that the other two big communities in Jerusalem. Okay, we have three big communities in Jerusalem: the Palestinians, the Haredi community, and the non-Haredi community, which is the secular and the religious together. The two Jewish communities are immigrants from the city in very big numbers. Okay, all my friends from high school, I study in a Gimnasia Ivrit in Rehavia. Most of my friends from high school are not living in Jerusalem today for many years now. And the Haredim start living Jerusalem in the 90s, and today there are three pretty big cities in Israel, which are most of the residents there are Haredim from Jerusalem, right?
Modi'in,
Modi'in-Illit, Beitar-Illit, which is a very big city because
and
the
we should mention it. Yeah, exactly. We should mention that a lot of Haredim have left Jerusalem because of the rising prices of housing, and they had to find a cheaper solution.
And the Palestinians are the only group they didn't left Jerusalem, because if the only place they can go it's the West Bank, but they cannot go there because then they can lose their rights and their residency. So they stayed in Jerusalem. And this is contribute to the crisis in housing in East Jerusalem, and it creates the informal building, the building without permits that we see in East Jerusalem, and it's created the tensions between the Palestinians and the Israeli authorities, and the violent, and it's creates so many problems. And so this is the differences. Sorry for taking too long. But this is the differences between residency and citizenship, and this is a very important fact to remember about Jerusalem, that we have two kinds of people live here.
But we should say that the Palestinians from East Jerusalem, they can vote for the municipality, for the Jerusalem municipality. They don't do it.
Yeah, that's important.
They hardly do it, but they have the right to vote on the municipal elections.
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for our listeners to understand the big picture, first of all, and then, I think we want to get into some of the differences between East and West Jerusalem. Now, Nir, would you say that I'm correct? First of all, like when you cross over road number 1 and go into East Jerusalem, it's like you're entering a totally different country, right? Like a totally different world. Help us understand a little bit about what East Jerusalem looks like. And it's, comprised of different neighborhoods, Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah, like the center of town, the old city. Just help give us a lay of the land a little bit. And then we can get into some of the additional complex issues that are around that.
So just to give you the idea is that East Jerusalem, it's a city, only East Jerusalem, it's a city the size of Tel Aviv. Okay? It's approximately about...
Massive, right?
It's massive.
How many residents are we talking, you think?
400,000 people. Okay, this is the size of Tel Aviv. There are all kinds of neighborhoods there. There is a refugee camp. The only Palestinian refugee camp in the boundaries of Israel is in Jerusalem. The Shrafat refugee
in Israel
camp.
proper, yeah. The Shrafat in the north. Right.
And there is another neighborhood called Kufr Aqab, which Shrafat refugee camp. They are on the other side of the separation wall of the wall, and that creates like an enclave of Jerusalem on the other side of the wall. Why it's so important? Because of this crisis of housing, many Palestinians moved to those neighborhoods. Both of them together are only 4% of the territory of East Jerusalem, but 30% of the population of East Jerusalem live there. Of the 40% of the Palestinians of Jerusalem live on 4% of the territory. This is because when Israel built the wall and left those two neighborhoods on the other side, on the Palestinian side, the Israeli authorities don't care about what's going on there. I mean, they can build whatever they want, and they actually built huge buildings
without permits and without supervision.
Exactly.
And it could be really a death trap.
It's really death threat. This is not the place you want to be when earthquake will hit Jerusalem, and it will happen. Like we do have earthquake in history of Jerusalem. So this is the first kind of, let's say, neighborhoods. And then you have the historical neighborhood of East Jerusalem, Silwan, Atur, Abu Tor, which are very dense with severe lack of everything, of sidewalk, public transportation, schools, clinics, community
shelters. We just saw in the war.
I think there's only one shelter.
There is one public shelter in East Jerusalem, but there are also other shelters in schools there. But obviously, a lot of people lack shelters, and we just wrote to the Minister of Defense during the last war with Iran about that, and we're preparing a legal proceeding in this regard. Yeah, that's just another example of the shortage of basic necessary services.
Yeah, I think the way to understand the situation in East Jerusalem is to realize that both the Israelis and the Palestinians, for many years, saw the situation in Jerusalem as a temporary. I mean, the Israeli thought for many years, okay, Jerusalem is united and we celebrate it every year, and this is our historical capital, and all those big words that Netanyahu will say tomorrow, day after tomorrow, for sure. But on the bureaucratic level, among the people who decided where to put the budget, there was a saying, okay, it's not going to stay. It's not going to stay this way. One day will come and Jerusalem will divide again, or we'll find some kind of solution. So we don't have to invest in Silwan and Essaouiyah and Kufr Aqab. And I mean, it's not really part of Jerusalem, okay? And the Palestinians feel the same. They say, okay, Israel occupied us and we're under occupation, but we don't really have to invest in study Hebrew, or to get involved in the municipality, or to find solution for our housing issues, because one day will come and we will be the occupation will end, and there will be a Palestinian state here, and we'll find a solution. So both sides felt like it's only temporary. And it's go on for many years. And I think this is a very important fact to understand why Jerusalem look like the
how
way
the status quo was developed, right? And,
right, exactly. Now, I think that this set of mind of it's only temporarily actually collapsed about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, in 2014, when the last fake negotiation between Israel and the Palestinians totally collapsed. And since then, I do think there are changes in Jerusalem. I guess we'll talk about it, about the Israelization of East Jerusalem. So part of it is because of this collapse of this mindset of it's going to change soon.
Yeah, Nir, I think you're painting obviously a very, very bleak picture, but I remember that in your book, in Yerushalayim, what you're talking about a really interesting process that you just alluded to, which is despite the extreme disparities and the discrimination and the lack of public services, maybe because of the lack of public services in East Jerusalem, we see this process of Israelization. So more and more Palestinians from East Jerusalem actually are more immersed in West Jerusalem, and there is more actually, I don't know if connection or relationship, but more, people see each other, right? Yeah, more integrated, exactly. So maybe say a word about that.
And especially on practical matters. I mean, we see Palestinians come to shop at, West Jerusalem shopping malls and supermarkets, and, help us understand.
Palestinian guards, right? We have thousands of Palestinians working as guards in the malls or in
security
in
guards.
security
Yeah.
guards. It's security
Yeah.
guards, which is insane. Okay, so they don't have weapons; they have got, like, I don't know, pepper gas or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's something that you could not think about a few years ago. Now, you mentioned before that I in the last 2.5 years I covered Gaza. And I covered the humanitarian situation in Gaza and the killing and the starvation and the destruction and whatever. And I felt a lot of despair from the future of this place and for the future of my kids, right? Of my children here in Jerusalem. And the only place I found a bit of hope is actually Jerusalem. And this is because of
even
this
after
Israelization.
October 7th.
Yeah, only after October.
Wow.
Especially after
Wow.
October 7th.
Wow.
Because Jerusalem is the only place where Israelis and Palestinians, like every morning, tens of thousands of Israelis of Palestinians wake up and go to work together on the same level, not as a boss and an employee and as a soldiers and someone who want to cross the checkpoints, but on the same level in the universities, in the fashion shops in Kenya, in Markham Mall. And most of the time, they are not killing each other. They are working day after day together, and the war didn't change it.
Especially the health services and the hospitals.
The
and,
health services, and
Right, of
go
course.
to the Hebrew University. I think last year it was. I went to the Hebrew University to the Mount Scopus campus during Eid al-Fitr. It's looked like Yom Kippur there. I mean, there was no one there because there are so many Palestinians study today in the Hebrew University, which you can feel the Eid, the holiday, the Muslim holiday. Now, these processes of what I call the Israelization of East Jerusalem, there are all kinds of explanations, but I think the main explanation is the wall. The wall actually cut between East Jerusalem and the West Bank. And
let's explain to our listeners the separation wall that was built by the government of Israel. When was it built in Jerusalem?
About 20 years ago, in 2000. It started in 2004.
The beginning of the 2000s. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Ariel Sharon.
And when you say wall, in some places along the Green Line, it's a fence, and in Jerusalem, it's largely a cement wall.
Yeah, a
right?
cement wall between the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and this wall almost physically pushed the Palestinians to the west, because until the war, if I'm
to the west, you mean to the Israel side?
To the Israel
wall.
side, to integrate into the Israeli economy, to the Israeli education, to the Israeli. I mean, if I was a Palestinian until the war, in school I was studied the Palestinian curriculum, which called the Tawjih, not the Israeli curriculum, the Bagrut. And I almost didn't learn any Hebrew. And then I went to study in the Palestinian University in the West Bank. And then I got married with a girl from Hebron or from somewhere else in the West Bank, and maybe found a job in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem. And then there is the war. Now I still can do all those things because I have the blue ID. I can cross this checkpoint, but it's much more complicated now. And then people start asking themselves, why should I go to Bethlehem University if I can go to the Mount Scopus? It's much closer.
To the Hebrew University.
To the Hebrew University, or to the or the colleges. There are so many good colleges here in Jerusalem. And if I work in Malcha Mall or somewhere in Israeli company, I will earn much more. And so, and this process actually create a new political community between the Israeli Arabs, the Arab 48, and the Arab 67, the Arabs from the Palestinians in the West Bank. Now the Jerusalemite Arabs, the Jerusalemite Palestinians are a new political community, which, like, metaphorically came to the Israelis and saying, okay, now you have to decide, what do you want? If you really want united Jerusalem, so give us a citizenship. Let us be part of Jerusalem.
I mean, what you're talking about is this really fascinating example of natural and almost pragmatic integration of Palestinians into East Jerusalem, both for, the ability to make a living, the ability to advance in society. And you were saying about, sort of the representatives of this community coming to the state of Israel, or at least to the government, to
It's
Jerusalem.
metaphor. They're not really coming. Yeah,
Yeah.
they challenging the Israeli discourse, saying, okay, now you have to decide. What do you want? You want united Jerusalem? So you should take us into the Israeli society. We should be like the 48 Arabs, the Israeli Arabs.
Which includes
full citizenship.
Full citizenship, voting rights, right? Everything, right? And we want to be like those who live in Jaffa or Haifa or anything like that, right? Yeah.
This is what it's mean. This is the real unification of Jerusalem, not the fake unification that we did in 1967 when we took the land and didn't took the people that living on the land.
It didn't integrate the city. And that would also mean infrastructure in the city. You can see a difference in East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem, right? Of course, and garbage pickup and all that kind of stuff, right?
But
and by the way, Neil, it's interesting, I think, to note that the current mayor of Jerusalem, which has been in power for, a few years now already, he was sort of very vilified before he entered his role. And actually, it's not that everything is great, but I think, is it true that there is some improvement in the attitude of the municipality toward East Jerusalem?
It's a very difficult question.
Complicated.
Well, no, the role of mayor of Jerusalem is a very important role. It can do a lot, but it cannot really change the infrastructure, the base issues of East Jerusalem. Now, the current mayor, Moshe Leon, did some, I think, in his first term more than in his second terms, to help East Jerusalem to try to solve some of the problem. I feel that after October 7, I don't know if he stopped trying or he didn't succeed. It did not succeed, but it doesn't. It felt like it all slowed down. The reforms and trying to. That's what I feel. But I will not forget to Moshe Leon one thing, that he went to the hospital to visit a 9-year-old boy from Isawiya that lost his eye by a bullet of the police, shot by the police. So he had I think his heart is in the right place. I think he could do more in his politics.
I want to talk about the flag march that we mentioned earlier, because I think this is really, unfortunately, this is the event that has been defining Jerusalem Day for many years now. And just to explain to our listeners that this is a march that has been going on for many, many years, for decades, and it's being the participants are mostly young students from religious schools, public religious schools. So it's not Haredim, it's actually the national religious sector that is marching through the streets of Jerusalem. And this has been going on for years. But in the last decade or so, we have seen an unbelievable extremism and racism and violence associated with the march. The march is going through the Muslim quarter, and a lot of violence is used against the Palestinian residents of the Muslim quarter. And so the police actually instructs the residents to stay at home, to close their businesses early, and to stay at home, because otherwise they would just be beaten up. And it means that they're losing a half day of business, and of course are subject to violence if they happen to be on the streets where they live. So this has become really a routine of the marchers going on and beating on doors of the people living in the Muslim quarter with the flags, with the Israeli flags. Just imagine how terrible this is, including violence, a lot of violence that you were a victim of, Nir as well. And I can tell you that we have been, calling, writing to the police beforehand, demanding that this would not be allowed, and afterwards demanding that people would be brought to justice. We have been writing the education minister to tell, the students that are participating in it to have, educational activity around it, to try to prevent this, to try to start a deep process, talking how terrible this should be. But maybe, Neil, tell us from your perspective how it looks like, because this has been going on for many, many years.
And some people may have seen the footage that you showed also about this, these, the violence that took place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm covering the march flag for I think 18 years now, and yeah, and in the last, I think it's in the last 10 years or so that it's became like full scale pogrom. And it's felt that the police and the Ministry of Education and all the other authorities just let them do what they want. They attack journalists, Palestinians, just crossing the street. They vandalized businesses, as you said. And I want you to hear the songs that they sing. They're like moving in groups, and each group have its own songs. But most of them, like it's especially when they get into the old city, into the Muslim corridor. It's like you felt like you feel like I don't know, excitement of reoccupying, like they reoccupying the city, okay, like in 67, and they entered into the gate, from Damascus Gate, Charles, and they start celebrating and singing like "Let your village be burned."
Burn the village, burn
Burn
their
the
village.
village.
Yeah.
Muhammad is dead. Death to Arabs.
It feels like
Sometimes
almost like they took the chants from the soccer stadium of Beitar Yerushalayim and brought them into the old city, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is now you understand. This is Jerusalem Day for me. Like I'm staying there for hours upon hours, like 12 hours sometimes in this place, in the Damascus Gate, and see groups after groups, and I'm saying to myself, what kind of community, what kind of discourse allowed such event to happen? What went wrong in the Zionist religious community that the main celebration every year is such an ugly event? And I don't have an answer. I mean, it's
Well,
really sad.
I want to say, I think it's terrible. I think a lot of people in Jerusalem and in Israel are appalled by it. And we should mention a few initiatives that sort of are, came to the world in order to counter this and really to present a sane voice, a sane Jewish voice, of tolerance and acceptance and inclusion. And we always take part in two events. One of them is an event led by Tag Meir, which is at the same day of the parade in the morning. We go into the old city, into the Muslim quarter, and distribute flowers and also,
Right.
sort of brochures that say this is not our Judaism, and we believe in a Judaism that really accepts everyone and in equality and respect for all. And then a few days later, next week, we're going to join the Interfaith March for Tolerance, Human Rights, and Peace, organized by Rabbis for Human Rights and by many other organizations. And we are marching, members of all, the three religions. Again, talking about the role of religion actually to bring people together, to promote tolerance and to promote, shared society rather than hatred and hostility. So I think it's important to note that while we're seeing this terrible phenomenon that has been growing over the years and did not have, we didn't see any response of the authorities.
Right.
We see many people who do not share those views, and obviously we need to amplify the other views because this is so important on
Yes, you're right.
Jerusalem Day. And yeah.
And it's also very not Jerusalemite event. Like most of the people, they are not from Jerusalem. As I told
People
you before,
come in and flock to Jerusalem from outside.
yeah, they come from the outside.
That's very
And
important.
most of the Jerusalemites that I know hate this day and hate this event, hate this march. And just wait to get over with.
I just want to get back to the question of integration, and because when you ask, let's say, residents of the Muslim quarter in the old city, do they understand that this is not necessarily representative of all of Israel and that there is a whole other population in West Jerusalem? And how do we counter that with the sort of desire by some in the Palestinian community, what they call sort of anti-normalization, against the integration, and we want to have our own, but we want to be treated equally, and like how to make sense of that for us, if you can.
Well, it's a bit difficult, but one thing I have to say is that the Palestinian society know about the Israeli society much more than what we as Israelis know about the Palestinians. They understand very well that they are extremists. They know Ben Gvir very well. They know the politicians. They speak, like in average, the Palestinians speak much better Hebrew than Israelis speak Arabic. So they know, they understand what's going on. Now there are all kind of streams, and as I told you before, it's 400,000 people. It's a huge city, and there are all kind of political streams in East Jerusalem. And there is also the stream of the people who believe in anti-normalization and opposed any connection with Israelis. I think today they are minorities. Most of the people will say, in my daily life, I can do much more. I can study Hebrew. I can go I can go to the Hebrew University. I can send my kids to learn the Bagrut, the Israeli curriculum. I can work with the Israelis, but it doesn't mean anything about my identity as a Palestinian. And I think we as Jews can understand it, because Benjamin Zev Herzl was the one who baptized his son and called him Hans, and went to integrate into the German society.
Wanted to assimilate,
but he's
yes.
the one who identified himself as who created the Zionism, the national
national liberation movement of the Jewish people.
Jewish movement.
Yeah.
And we can see it also in the Israeli Arabs, right? The Israeli Arab moved into Israelization much farther than the Arabs in Jerusalem. You know that today the percentage of doctors in Israel, Arabs doctors in Israel, is higher than the percentage in population. It's more than 20%, right? And we have politicians in the Knesset, and Ahmed Tibi, I think, is the politician with the best Hebrew in the Knesset, and they move into Israelization on the daily life and to integration into Israeli society. But their Palestinian identity only gets stronger during the time. And their solidarity with their brothers in Gaza and in the West Bank only gets stronger, even though in the daily life they are in the Israeli. So life is complicated, and I think in Jerusalem as well. If people in Israel think that this process of Israelization will solve the problem of Jerusalem, I say forget about it. It's not solving any problem. I do think it's lower the violence. I do think that the fact we don't have much violence in Jerusalem in the last few years, this is because of Israelization, because people know each other much better. They have much more to lose, and it's a fact. And I do think that the fact that we didn't have much terror attacks and clashes on the street of the Palestinian neighborhoods in East Jerusalem in the last 3 years, it's also because of this process that I talk about. But it doesn't solve the problem, the basic problem that in Jerusalem we don't have a democracy. We have two kind of people, and we have one government that only one group can affect the government that took the decision.
We've talked intensively about the tension between Palestinians and Jews in Jerusalem, but I do want to mention we're nearing the end of the episode, and I do want to mention other tensions. Obviously, the tension between the ultra-Orthodox and the religious and liberal Jews, and we should say that Jerusalem is very, very special in the sense that the diversity of Jewish life here is amazing. I think this is sort of the capital of liberal Orthodox Jews here, modern Orthodoxy. Lots of congregations, including egalitarian Orthodox congregations, and I think this is a phenomenon of the last decades. While we see a lot of extremism on many respects, we see a lot of openness, definitely within Judaism, which is beautiful. And we should mention that we said that we have mixed feelings, all of us, about Jerusalem. There are a lot of beautiful and very unique phenomena that we're seeing in Jerusalem that we should mention here. And another thing I wanted to mention is LGBTQ community here in Jerusalem. We remember the murder of Shira Banki in 2015 in the Pride Parade. A girl, 16-year-old, was murdered by an ultra-Orthodox zealot. I think today, and we're going to have the Pride Parade in less than a month. I think the central place of the LGBTQ community in Jerusalem is not questioned anymore. And I think that while you spoke a lot about immigration of secular people out of Jerusalem, Jerusalem is much more secular than it was when, I don't know, like my husband who grew up in Jerusalem or when you grew up. I mean, we have more places that are open. It's not, obviously, it's not like Tel Aviv at all. But there are some developments to the other side. So I think it's important to sort of convey the complexity of the city, and it goes to many, many directions.
Yeah, I agree. I think the liberal camp in Jerusalem won two, few important battles. One of them is on Shabbat. That on Shabbat today there are more. I mean, there's not a lot, but there's a bit more businesses open, and there are a few cinemas that are working in Shabbat in Jerusalem, which was nothing when I grew up in this city, like 30 years ago, and of the LGBTQ place in the city and the Pride parade, etc. But there is one battle that I think we are losing with the liberal community of Jerusalem. It doesn't matter if we are secular or not. And this is the battle on the neighborhoods. The change of the characters of the neighborhoods in West Jerusalem, when a big ultra-Orthodox Haredi communities get into the neighborhoods and changing the character of the place, shutting down the schools or the community centers and open synagogues and yeshivas, and part of the Jerusalemite do not feel that this is their home anymore, and this is pushed them out of the city. And I think this is a battle that we are not winning. There's almost no secular neighborhood in Jerusalem. When you can feel, I don't know, that business opening Shabbat and you can feel this is the liberal place. And I think it's a problem. Now, the issue is that, as I told you before, Jerusalem is not the worst city in Israel, of course. There are much worse places to live in. But the problem is that people like me, there is a very big competition from Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, it's a better city to live in many categories, in many issues. And Tel Aviv, pull us in. So this is an issue that I think will shape the city in the coming years and decades. Yeah.
So, as we're winding our time down, first of all, Nir, maybe can we ask you about optimism a little bit, or where you see both where you see hope, and you mentioned, you alluded to something, and what do you hope for? And then I have two tachlis questions. Yeah.
So, as I told you before, I think Jerusalem today is a different city than this. The city that my children growing up in today is a very different city than the city that I used to know when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I can live my whole life without meeting a Palestinian. I mean, I saw Palestinians on the street, I saw them, but I didn't have any connection with them. Today, my children, they have Palestinians in the classroom, the safeguard in the swimming pool.
Where do they go to school?
In Liada.
Nice.
It's
the same as my son. Yeah, maybe we have in the same class.
They have the lifeguard in the swimming pool is a Palestinian. They will have Palestinian in the university for sure. They will work with Palestinians. They will know Palestinians. So, and this is give me some hope.
They're going to a very, very good school, liberal school, that is very unique in the Israeli region of today.
Right, but go to Jaffa Street and count how many hijab do you see there. And they're coming for shopping, not for cleaning the restaurants, right? And this is a new phenomenon. It
Especially
wasn't like this, like
with the light rail.
yeah. And go
Yeah.
to the light rail. The light rail, actually, the red line of the light rail, it's the first public transportation line in Jerusalem, which is mixed between Palestinian neighborhood and Israeli neighborhood.
And by the way, between Haredim and secular people too, and there is no segregation in the light rail, which is really interesting. Yeah.
And my point is that if we learn something from October 7 is that the place that we had the biggest war, a war that go to the bottom of earth and to the sky with the most expensive and sophisticated devices on it, was the most, when people didn't saw each other, was the most violent and bloody places between the sea and the river and the sea. And the place where there is no wall, there's no wall between Silwan and Bet Hakerem. The place where and there's no wall in Haifa, there's no wall in Jaffa. This was the most common place. This was the places when, not in October 8, but in October 10, people went back to work and keep working together.
And this gives you hope of a different future that is possible.
This gives me hope that one day we could find a way to tear down the walls and to see, to dehumanize. Yeah, I mean, under the current leadership of Israel, which is the worst leadership that one can imagine, I think. We went through a process of dehumanize the Palestinians, and the only way to think about different futures, rehumanize the Palestinians in the eyes of Israelis and the Israelis in the eyes of Palestinians. And the way to do it is to meet with each other on an equal base. And this is what we have in Jerusalem, some kind of island in Jerusalem and in other places that we have. So if there is hope, it's there.
Okay, well, Nir, what is your favorite place to eat hummus in Jerusalem?
Oh my God. So I cannot share it, This is
the most charged political question that we can ask, right? This is the
God, you are going. I cannot see I cannot go to the old city anymore. If I would say okay, I will say two.
We have a lot of listeners in the Muslim Quarter. I think it's a
place in the old city.
Hummus Arafat in the old city.
Is considered to be, and there is also El Karmawi hummus outside of Damascus Gate, which is also very good. But there are many others, and there is even one Jewish restaurant which has very good hummus. So there's hope also.
Can you share the
Pinati? I like Pinati as well.
So you're a Pinati, okay, yeah. And just to clarify, the original, or are you okay eating any of the franchises? Because that is where Pinati, I draw the line
only
myself.
The original. Do you use a franchise? Yeah. I didn't know about it. Okay.
No, they're in different malls and they have Pinati in different places. God. Like in Givat Shaul, they have Pinati. So okay, let's just Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's good. Well, Nir, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your insight and experience reporting in Jerusalem over so many years. Especially around, Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day. It's really important to have conversations about the city. I don't know if we solved anything, but I think you helped paint us a picture and really get into some of the issues, and sharing a little bit about the Jerusalem that we still hope can exist for the future. So really, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Nir. It's really been an eye-opener conversation.
Thank you.
Not easy all the time, but super, super important to understand the reality and then think of what I want to change about this. Conversations like this are exactly why we started this podcast. This podcast exists because we believe Israel can be better for all who live here and for all who care about it from afar. But that takes honest conversation and it takes partnership. So if these conversations are important to you, please share the episode and help us keep this conversation going.
To stay up to date, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to help us grow, leave a 5-star review. Maybe something like this. I read in Psalm 137 where I'm told not to forget thee, O Jerusalem. And if I do, my right hand might wither or my tongue might cleave to the roof of your mouth. And frankly, I was really worried about that happening to me. So I started off with listening to this episode of the Pluralist Podcast, which talks all about Jerusalem. And, that's
And
what I'm
now
going
I'm
to
not
do.
going to forget. I'm never going to forget
And
it.
now I will not forget. And so if you leave a review like that, that will be really helpful to this. And then send this episode to someone who should be part of this conversation. And if you feel like sponsoring an episode, it's a great way to mark an anniversary or birthday or possibly even Yom Yerushalayim. So thank you so much, and we'll be back with you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.